and then the investment genius is just the icing on the cake. So clearly a many-splendored man, and therefore my thanks to Motilal Oswal and to Raamdeo Agrawal. Every year they do produce a gem of an idea in their wealth creation study, but to defer to the investing genius and say that we'll rather learn lessons from him this year rather than a panel on their work is an excellent idea, an amazing one. And thank you for that. Well, as was just announced, we are the co-moderators, but I think that is a delusion that has been sold to Mr. Damani. As far as I'm concerned, he is a panelist. And I'll be directing as many questions to Mr. Damani as to Mr. Bhattacharyya, to Monish Pabrai and Raamdeo Agrawal. But, just a word on the panelists. Mr. Damani, I'll defer to you. I think you know their Mungerisms much better than I do. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Latha. Thank you, Raamdeo, for inviting me. One of Munger's heroes was a guy called Benjamin Franklin. And he used to quote, he said, "Well done is better than well said." And Munger not only spoke well, did well, but lived well. An extraordinary life. And Charlie was, of course, known for his multidisciplinary mind. Munger's life straddled 2 centuries. And his insights from the study of psychology, economics, physics, biology, history, and as you said, even architecture are astounding. When asked the secret of his success, he said, "I am rational." So here to discuss his wit, wisdom, and life's work, I'm joined by a panel devoted to understanding him. Of course, Mohnish joins us all the way from the States somewhere. Hi, Mohnish. Thank you for joining us so much.
Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm joined by Sanjoy Bhattacharyya. A lot of people call him a professor. Some people call him guru. But I call him apne Mumbai ka Munger. And then I'm joined, of course, by our very own Raamdeo Agrawal, whom I like to call apna Bharat ka Buffett. Bharat ka Buffett. So thank you all for joining us. Yeah, the vice chairman, Chalo, we'll take care of that. But thank you. Before we start, I just want to see how much the audience knows about Munger. So I've got a small rapid fire for them. So let's see how they do.
Please, go ahead.
So I'm going to ask you some questions and you can raise your hands, and I would assume my fellow panelists and my son here knows all the answers, but let's see how good the crowd is on Munger. Okay. Sometime in the 80s, Buffett bought Munger. When Buffett bought his first corporate jet, Munger called him and they named the jet what? Your choices are Berkshire 1. Please raise your hand. Those are the things was called Berkshire 1. Okay. The Indefensible. Who called it the Indefensible? Okay, a few hands. And the third one, Capitalist Tool. Well, the correct answer is indefensible, because Munger thought that the purchase was indefensible, and to Munger's honor, he used to travel even in his late 90s by economy with a book. Correct, Sanjoy? According to Charlie Munger, one investment that he still regrets is, the choices are A, Fannie Mae. Raise your hands. B, Eastman Kodak. C, Alibaba. Yeah, again, I mean, this is not a very fluent audience, but it's Alibaba. Actually, the last interview he said he regretted buying Alibaba the most. Okay, here's one. Buffett and Munger bought See's Candies in the 1970s for paying $25 million, one of the most iconic trades that they did out there. And Buffett and Munger have often waxed about how much cash See's Candies generated. How much cash do you think See's Candies generated over the next 50 years for them? Is it A, 25 million? Is it B, 100 million? Is it C, 2 billion? Is it D, 25 billion?
C.
He's right, of course. He knows everything. I called him a professor for good measure, So it is, of course, 2 billion plus that was generated from a single $25 million investment. And what Buffett and Munger have taught us and generations of investors is that a business that throws out cash and doesn't require capex is worth its weight in gold. And they always give this example of See's Candies, how much it does. Munger was in one avatar of his life, Latha, a real estate developer. Yeah, he also did real estate. And the key to him, according to Munger, to generating more money from real estate was what? A, bigger square footages of homes, 2, larger kitchens in the homes, or 3, lush landscaping. How many of you feel it was the first one, bigger square footage would generate more revenue? How many was B, bigger kitchens? Arjun, you're wrong. And how about lush landscaping? He used to say lush landscaping will give you 3 times the return of that.
He had another one on this, which is phenomenal, because I think
Mike.
he had another interesting thought on this, and I'm sure Monish would speak about it at some point. You know, a few years before he passed, he made, I think, the University of Southern California, if I'm not wrong, an offer that he would grant them $100 million to make dormitories.
Correct.
But there was one condition. He said the dormitories cannot have windows. And so people were stunned. They said, what kind of guy is this? And his logic was very fascinating. He said, if you don't have windows, people will come out of their rooms to meet each other. So there'll be much better social bonding.
And he learned that from basically the cruise ships, you know, when people, you know, mingle
Correct.
and
That's
single out there. Great. A company that Munger admired the most, all right, in his life. And I'll just share a joke with you because it'll be kind of fun to hear this joke. So Buffett and Munger are going on a plane somewhere and it's hijacked. And the hijacker says, okay, one last wish, what do you want? So Munger says, well, I want to give my presentation on Costco one more time and speak about the virtues of the retail business that Costco does. And they ask Buffett, what is your last wish? So he says, shoot me first. So Buffett was clearly the most biggest admirer. I was going to say Apple, Coke, Washington Post, but I given the answer, it was Costco. There's a famous talk Munger gave in the 1980s where he projected by 2034 what would be the Coke's market cap. What should be Coke's market cap? He said, taking back 150 years and using only the mental models that he was famous for, he projected the market cap of Coke. In your opinion, what would it be? Would it be A, $2 trillion? Raise your hands if you think it's $2 trillion. B, $200 billion. C, the company would be bankrupt by 2034. Come on, you got to get one of those answers, guys.
2 trillion.
Too hard to determine. Okay, Latha is absolutely right. No wonder she's the economics editor also. $2 trillion. He actually projected out $2 trillion. And he said there were 8 billion people, 4 billion servings, 8 billion servings a day. Multiply that, make 4 cents a serving. It comes to $115 billion profit, right, Sanjoy? That gives a multiple of 20, becomes a $2 trillion company. Okay. Under Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, Berkshire Hathaway has roughly returned to its shareholders what returns? Is it a 10-bagger? Raise your hands if you think it's a 10-bagger. A 100-bagger? 100-bagger, guys. Hockey stick. No? 1,000-bagger?
10.
10? Latha, I'm disappointed in you. 10-bagger for Berkshire Hathaway? We won't be talking about them. It's been a 20,000-bagger or 2 million percentage return for Berkshire during their life. In fact, someone calculated that if Berkshire stock fell 95% or I think 99% from the price it's today, they would still beat the S&P. That's how lucrative it has been. Okay, final thing, in his last days.
Ramesh, can I add to that?
Yeah.
This is one of Raamdeo's favorite themes.
Mike.
This is one of Raamdeo's favorite themes. And in a sense, a lot of Mr. Munger's life is exemplified and best understood in terms of the power of compounding. Yeah. So I think if you ask people, and you just told them the absolute number of times that it multiplied, I think it would be interesting to ask them at what percent it compounded over that period of time, from 1974, when he first acquired Berkshire, complete control, till today.
Give them 3 choices, ask them.
Okay, the first answer is 16%. The next one is 20.5%, and the last one is 26%. Yeah, this is more common. Everyone seems to know this.
20.5, they figured what the answer was.
Too precise, so it should be correct.
Okay, what was Munger's? This is the last question before I turn it over back to Latha. In his last years of his life, Munger used to enjoy watching a situation comedy, a comedy series on television. Which one did he watch? Was it The Friends? Was it The Crown? Or Sanjoy, was it Seinfeld? Okay? How many people say the crown? Well, I'm glad I got the professor on at least one point. It's actually the Seinfeld. That's what he said to Becky Quick, that he enjoys watching the Seinfeld. Great. Latha, thank you.
But at least we are glad he watched comedies. There's something I can say I have common with him. All right. Well, actually, we have people here who have, Monish Pabrai and Sanjoy Bhattacharyya who have actually met and spoken to him, and Mr. Damani and
The
Raamdeo.
maximum is Raamdeo.
Okay.
Though Monish started the lunch idea with Mr. Buffett, I think the number of times
He visited.
who doesn't live in the United States, I should put a qualification. Among the people who don't live in the United States, the guy who's met him the most is Raamdeo.
Sanjay, Mr. Bhattacharya, you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, no, the question really is to you. What was your reaction when you first met him? And what are the life lessons that you drew from the times you personally met him?
I think I was very impressed by the fact that he spoke so little. I thought that was the hallmark of true wisdom. You know, Buffett kept on chirping all the time. And once in a while, he'd ask Charlie to say something. Charlie would say nothing to add, which I thought was a sign of a guy who was really secure. So he never used to sort of use even one unnecessary word in communicating. The second thing that I loved about him, and in a sense it was an inspiration for me, was this desire to try to learn constantly and to improve yourself constantly and to read. As he said, many people thought he was, a book with two legs sticking out. So I'm nowhere there, but I think that idea is inspirational, that you should try to constantly learn and improve yourself every day, a wee bit even, and one of the best ways of doing that is by reading. So these are the two things that I took away.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the lesson that every day when you go to bed, you have learned a little more than what you were when you got up in the morning is, I think, a great lesson, something you can remind yourself. But
and the third thing, sorry, Latha,
yes, sure.
And he was an investor.
Third, fourth, fifth is fine.
No. The third thing which it really resonates with me personally is he was an investment genius. He was an intellectual colossus. Apart from his, independently, I'd say if he hadn't been an investor, he would still have been supremely gifted in doing whatever he did. But the thing, and he said this in one of his quotable quotes, I forget the exact quote, but he said one of the best things you can do in your life is to help other people to get to know more and to do better, which I thought was truly, truly remarkable. In fact, it reflects the character of the man. If there's one thing about Mr. Munger that people often don't take note of, is that he was such an outstanding human being in terms of his character. It is truly rare to find people who have such incredible character. Blunt, forthright, honest, and
giving.
And giving, that's right.
Both
absolutely.
Money and mind.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the stunning quality. Monish Pabrai, you are in that fortunate position as the last person to have in many people I know, to have actually had lunch with him. Tell us about that day. Was there something outstanding, some anecdote that still keeps coming to you?
Well, what was my last dinner, I didn't know it would be my last dinner with Charlie, was exactly 1 month before he passed away, and we had a nice warm friendship, very unlikely. I still don't fully understand he wanted to be friends, but that went on for like more than 14 years. And in the 14 years, I used to play bridge with him quite a bit and probably meet him 4, 5, 6 times a year at his home for dinner and so on. And I had never really imposed on Charlie, right? So I would just be in reactive mode in the sense that he would say, come over for dinner, and I'd say, okay. But I never asked him, can we meet or whatever. And the only time I did that was for that last meeting. I felt somehow that I wanted to see him, so I reached out and I said, can we meet? He said, yeah, so on a Saturday I went to LA and it was just me and him. So it was just a one-on-one wonderful evening. And, the thing is that Charlie was clearly dealing with a number of health issues. He said, that quote to me was, "There's a lot wrong with me," and I had brought him some stuff to read, and his assistant actually told me that, listen, don't give him anything to read below 24 font size. So basically, he was almost blind, but never complained. So actually, the stuff I gave him to read, 24 font is really large, and so it was printed in a really large font. But basically, I asked him, Charlie, you lost so many things. Golf went away, bridge went away, going to the office went away, driving went away, so many things went away, right? So I said, what bothers you? What bothers you about the way you are? And he really wasn't, never a complainer, right? So he said, the only thing I wish were better were my eyes, right? He had one eye that he was not blind in. And reading was really important to him. So even when reading was almost gone, not a complainer, right? And so basically, the key thing about Charlie was to soldier on, right? So his whole mantra was to just keep going. Almost every time I met him, at least 20-30 minutes would go talking about Costco. Costco was his, besides Berkshire, was his love in life. And all kinds of different things would come up about Costco. He would almost always be in a Costco flannel shirt, which you can buy for like $10. And I'd say the biggest lessons I learned from Charlie is not so much what he said, it's observing him. Observing him with the way he's interacting with his kids, his grandkids, his sons and daughter-in-laws, and so on. Like once a week, I think every Friday, he'd have a Zoom call with all his grandkids. Whoever could make it, they would join the call. And just a very warm person, very different from the persona we used to see in the Berkshire Hathaway meetings. A very warm, caring person.
Okay. It's almost coming alive, the way you say. But just occurred to me, what would be the Costco of our times, if you have to pick? I must insist, you must remember about
the company Ramesh chairs, Avenue Supermarts in India. I mean, if you're looking for the Indian equivalent of Costco, though I must say there are some important differences between Costco and Avenue Supermarts, which I'm sure again between Monish and Ramesh, they'd be the better people to speak about it.
I can say something. Nothing to add.
You can't escape from this. What's your Costco?
I think that would require a much superior IQ.
I'm just asking you to think on your feet. Obviously, if you thought through, you will have different answers. But
no,
Raamdeo, you too.
I think Costco is a unique model, and I think I remember Munger quoting once, and he was actually in love with Amazon too. He thought Jeff Bezos did a great job, but he actually said in print somewhere that Amazon should fear Costco and not the other way around. So that tells you a little bit about how much he loved that company.
Raamdeo, you want to try this question?
Yeah, without any confusion, it is the Avenue Supermart. I mean, closest to that. As a company, I'm saying, the business model, Yeah.
In the same sector. Monish Pabrai?
Yeah, I discussed this a bit with R.K. Damani, and I think a lot of the inspiration of DMart is really very heavily influenced by Walmart and Costco. Okay. I think it's a combination of those two that a lot of the model came from, and those are both amazing businesses. And we've seen obviously tremendous execution at DMart, and actually, in fact, one of the areas where Costco and Walmart differ a lot is in paying up for great real estate. And Costco always wanted to put their stores closer to where, they were affluent population centers and so on. And Walmart was always looking for the cheapest store, thinking that people will drive to wherever they need to go to get to them. And I think DMart took a lot of that playbook from Costco. So it's actually very, very wonderful to see some of the spirit of Costco in Mumbai and India and doing so well.
Okay. Well, actually, I thought somebody might even say Zomato, but that discussion for another day. Raamdeo, you know, there are many lessons we've got from, or we hear from Charlie Munger. Companies with a big moat, companies which fools can run. What's your best lesson, which you have lived?
I would say two of them. One, that Buffett's biggest mistake is corrected. In fact, he changed Buffett. He bought his biggest mistake was buying Berkshire Hathaway, because he was student of Graham, where you needed to buy cheapest possible stock, nets they call it. So that's what, once he met, I think after buying the stock, he met Charlie, and Charlie changed his mind. And he said, buy wonderful business at reasonable price rather than fair business at a very low price. Which is so that change actually brought him to buying, blue chip stamps. And then in there they bought Seas Candy. Then they bought Coke and everything, all the franchises.
Express, yeah.
So we learned from them. First time I learned that return on equity is more important, the franchise value is very important. So the quality culture came because of him. Because initially Buffett was a brand equity. I mean, like, we give all the credit to Buffett. But Buffett himself has gone and said that it is architected. Berkshire Hathaway itself is architected by Munger. They have executed the plan. So that's what is the biggest learning. Second one is about the compounding. He said, I learned about compounding in 91. But really what he said, which meant actually a lot, even today, is that it's actually heart and soul of understanding compounding is to first understand. And second is what it takes to engender it.
Which is patience.
Yes. So, patience and what the size of effort. Say like you grow at 25%, in 10th year, you have to go from 8 to 10. In 20 years, you have to go from, say if you have to go to 1,000, you have to go from 1,500 to, or 1,600 to 2,000. So, sorry, you have to go from 800 to 800,000. So your effort in that year is 200 times or 2,000 times of student's effort. So when he has done 20,000 times, you imagine at 15 or 20%, what is the last few years effort?
Last mile effort.
Yeah, so what it takes to engender that. So business model, the size of opportunity, the management depth, you have to really think through what is going to happen, not in next 1 or 2, 3, 4 years. Can this business actually compound at 25% or 20% after 20 years, 30 years? So there are very few business models which offer that opportunity. So, I mean, these two things stuck with me big time.
What about you, Mr. Damani?
Latha, we've all learned.
You've spoken in a previous, wealth creation study about circle of competence. Is that a big lesson? That
Yes.
you do where you are competent?
Yeah, of course, it's extremely important. According to Buffett, not only should you know your circle of competence, you should know the edge of it. So famously, they didn't buy Microsoft despite being pal with Bill Gates. But the thing that astonished me when I learned about Munger is illustrated in terms of a story. He said he was the chairman of Daily Journal, which had like a $10 million balance. And for 40 years, he read the financial paper Barron's and did nothing. And then one day he found a stock in there, which he thought was a no-brainer. So he went and bought the equity and the debt of that company. For namesake, it was called Tenneco. And he put $10 million into it. All of it in one sweep. So he waited 20 years before he got that opportunity. When he got it, he put all in. He didn't buy 10,000 shares or 20,000 shares. He put all of it in there. He took that $10 million, it went up to $80 million or something in that neighborhood. He sold that stock. He gave it to his protege called Lee Lu, who turned it to $400 million. So here he took $10 million and made it into $400 million just through waiting for the right investment opportunity. That mediocre opportunities are not, I unfortunately do that. You bet on mediocre opportunities, you feel you're missing the bus. But as Sanjoy said, that intellectual confidence in yourself to wait for the right opportunity, strike, and then back up the truck when to buy it, these are almost immortal lessons.
Well, actually, if you can develop that point, Mr. Bhattacharya, was it Buffett or Munger who said that you should do only 20 trading punches in your life? Buffett. I mean, that means only 20 buys. That means waiting for opportunities of 1 a year or 1 in 2 years if you live a very long life. Is that kind of patience?
I think that's part of the problem in India. We are looking for a multi-bagger every day. It's a serious problem with the evolution of Indian equity markets. Everyone spends most of their waking hours trying to find a new multi-bagger. I find this absolutely amazing and contradictory. It's simply not possible because it belies the faith in compounding. No one sets out to buy a multi-bagger. I don't know why people don't get this. When you sit down to look at a business, the lesson you learn from Charlie is that you focus on the business and how well you understand it. And the point Ramesh made, I think Monish made, is that if you understand it really well, you can actually run it. The level of your understanding of a business is demonstrated by your ability to actually physically hands-on run that business. You know, the ability to buy 100% of a company as opposed to small fractions of it
demonstrates that confidence.
If you couldn't run it, you wouldn't buy 100% of it.
Yeah, and also to add another point to the story, he made $400 million from those 2 trades. That, in effect, when he died, was almost 25% of his net worth.
Yeah,
so
right.
He was $2.5 billion and $400 million came from that. Astonishing stat.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for a guy who was very bullish on America, and this is, I think, a reflection again of how of his open-mindedness, and he's willing to constantly keep on adding to his treasure trove of, investing acumen. I think, and Monish would be the perfect guy to speak about this. He was greatly, I don't know, influenced is the right word, but he was very greatly sort of impressed by Lou Lee.
Oh.
Or Lee Lu, I don't know how you pronounce his name.
He might have met, Mohnish must have met Lelu.
Yeah, I'm sure he has.
Or he might have also given some money to him.
Absolutely, I don't know about that, but I'm sure Monish knows him very well. But the thing is, Buffett and Munger both said that why do you need to invest outside America? You need to, American companies invest in other countries, so why do we need to go and make it? So I think Lou Lee persuaded them for the first time, and it's a reflection of their open-mindedness, their willingness to listen, their willingness to recognize the huge differences that exist, and he embraced that wholeheartedly.
Fair point. Fair point. Well, actually, Manish, you're at a disadvantage because you're not jumping into the conversation. It's between us. So I invite you to jump into, add to any of the points made by Raamdeo, Mr. Damani and Mr. Bhattacharya. But my separate question to you is exactly this. I mean, inspired by what Mr. Bhattacharya said, he was a China bull, seemed to have been an India bear. Did that come up in your conversations with him? Did he ever regret it?
Oh yeah, it came up many times, and so I'll just quickly share 3 things that I think some of your viewers and people in the audience might find interesting. Is one of the biggest takeaways I got from actually Charlie and to some extent from Warren is that Charlie never looked back. So every time I would meet him, I would bring up, I said, look, Charlie, the body of work and the things you've done, the things you did for Berkshire, the things you've done for, Huntington Library, all these different things you've done. And he would just brush it off. He wasn't interested in talking about that. And what he would always have all his energy focused on was the problem at hand. So he never looked back. I learned a lot of lessons from that. A lot of us, we may have gone to good schools, we have worked at great places, we've built a business, whatever, and we look back and say, this is good and that is good. Charlie never did that. He basically, so I would meet him, and one time he was struggling with the succession at Daily Journal. He needed to find a CEO. And the entire evening he was just, talking about that. So all his energy was focused on the problem at hand. He got wind that there was a very large piece of real estate in Central California near the University of California, Santa Barbara, called Doheny Ranch. And Doheny Ranch is about 1,800 acres. It has about close to 2 miles of ocean front, Central California. It is worth in the billions. It's several billion. The family wanted to sell it. And Charlie got wind of it. And in about 3 days, he got a deal done where he convinced the family to sell Doheny Ranch to him for $73 million. Okay, something that was worth probably north of 5 or 7 billion or 10 billion. Couldn't even put a price on it. It's just amazing real estate. And he basically told the family, listen, you sell it to me for 73 million. One day after I buy it, I will donate it to the University of California, Santa Barbara. If you take a tram from that 1,800 acres to the UCSB campus, it's an 8-minute tram ride. So all these campuses, you know, Harvard and MIT and UC Berkeley, UCLA, etc., they have severe real estate problems. They are very landlocked. They can't grow. A lot of housing issues. Basically, what he did was, so the family, he convinced the family. He gave it to UCSB. The 1,800 acres is good for about 400 or 500 years of growth for UCSB. And the way he convinced the family was, he said, look, in California, the Coastal Commission and all these bodies, you will spend 100 years and they will not let you build anything on it. But if we give it to the university will be able to build on it. Nobody will object to the university building. And the family got it. So this whole deal took place in 3 days, right? And I met Charlie. I said, Charlie, of all the things you've done, this is huge. This is massive, right?
Yeah.
Brushed it off, like no interest in talking about it. Never ever, you know, most people don't even know about it. And because it was for him, his perspective was done. There's no point talking about it. Let's move to the next problem. And so I think that kind of approach of looking forward and not looking back was tremendous. I think very early when I met him, the first time I met him was in 2009, and I think in second meeting or something, he told me that he introduced me to Li Lu, and he said, I want both of you to promise me something. You know, we both met him together. Mm-hmm. He said, I need both of you to meet once a month for lunch. No agenda, just meet for lunch, right? So I told Charlie, I said, Charlie, if Li Lu wants to waste time with me, I don't have a problem, okay? And so we used to, Li Lu and I used to meet. I mean, he now moved to Seattle and I'm in Austin. So our monthly lunches have gone by the wayside, but we still, you know, at least 2-3 times a year we get together. Those lunches used to take place at Din Tai Fung, which is one of my favorite restaurants in California. And it was just wonderful. And I had a lot of discussions with Charlie about Li Lu. So I asked him, I said, Charlie, look, you meet this Chinese guy, you know, cold, you don't know this guy. And a few weeks after you meet him, you give him all this money to manage, right? So I said, where does that come from? Like I said, how are you able to figure out that he's extraordinary? And you know, his answer was, Mohnish, there's nothing to figure out. Look at the track record. You know, he said, I just looked. So when Li Lu came to the United States, you know, he was a wanted man in China. They wanted to actually imprison him for life. He was one of the leaders of Tiananmen Square. He did 3 simultaneous degrees at Columbia. You know, undergraduate degree, MBA, and a law degree. Finished all 3 in 3 years. Nearly at the top of his class. Came to the US with no English and finished. He was on student loans for his entire education, and the float on the student loan, you know, so like for example, he has to pay, you know, $20,000 or something in tuition. They would give it to him at the beginning of the year, and he used to invest the money before it actually needed to be paid. When he finished at Columbia, he had more than $1 million, and of course, in addition to that, he had you know, finished a degree and such. So Charlie said it was just a no-brainer, and I had a lot of wonderful insights and learnings from Charlie. So that's the other thing.
The India view, if you please.
He always went for the no-brainers, right? So Charlie was someone who was very patient, and almost every time, probably last few years, every time I meet him, he'd moan and groan saying, "Oh, we can't find anything to buy. Berkshire's cash is building up, this and that." And I say, Charlie, you guys always complain about this, and then in 4 or 5 years, some big elephant will show up, and you guys will take care of it. So I know that you keep moaning and groaning and keep looking at things, but it'll work out. But I think some of these things where, you don't look back, never want to take credit for anything. I was not bothered about any credit or any accolades to him. Most recent interview, I think, with Jason Zweig told him, what would you like on your gravestone in 8 words or less? And, he said, I tried to be useful. Okay, that's 5 words. Okay, I tried to be useful. And he didn't even hesitate for 2 seconds. And then he also asked him, who are you most grateful to? In life, Charlie, who are you most grateful to? He said, the first husband of my second wife. Okay, and he said that I only needed to be slightly better than that guy, and I had the unlimited love of this amazing woman because she contrasted me with him. So he said that I'm eternally grateful to that guy, and again, just very, very quick, great mind. And so many times I'd bring up, we have a foundation in India, Dakshinite, I have all these fork in the road issues. He'd never been to India. While I'm mumbling and fumbling what I'm trying to ask, he's already answered the question. And after he answered the question, then I'm thinking, why didn't I think of that? It's so obvious.
But
so
still,
everything would appear obvious after he said it.
Oh, absolutely. But any word on India? Any conversations?
Yeah, I think his concern on India was the bureaucracy. So, Churchill used to say, democracy is the worst system except for all the others. So we see that contrast between China and India. China wants to build a 1,000-mile road or 1,000-mile railroad. It'll just be built. Whatever's in the path will be just taken out. In India, we have due process. We have a lot of special interest groups and all these things, and those projects will take forever. We struggle with things in India, right? And so he recognized that. At the same time, he recognized that India was a place just like China where there were natural entrepreneurs. But his in balancing between, what were the positives and what were the negatives, he saw some of the negatives with the British bureaucracy that had been left behind and all of that. So his perspective was, well, he only wants no-brainers. India, even I think, requires a lot of brain power. So when I look at India, like even if you look at Motilal's study, there are exceptional businesses in India, exceptional managers, but they are exceptional investors too. And so it's not easy to find a 100-bagger in India. That's far from easy.
Okay. Well, the other question that occurred to me, Mr. Bhattacharya, did he ever discuss macros, or was he all in stocks? No macro at all.
I don't think Buffett echoed this at some point. He said the only thing you need to really think about, and Mr. Munger supported this, was you need to know the direction of interest rates, which is driven by inflation. He said, but apart from that, once in a while, if I know what's going on with interest rates, he didn't seem to think that it mattered very much. He was really focused on the heart and soul of what he owned. I also want to just make a quick comment for, I think, our audience. And in a sense, I think subconsciously, I don't know when Monish started it, but this is how he might have been influenced personally by Munger. This Dakshina Foundation, it is truly exceptional. And I would urge everyone to take a look at it. The kind of work it's doing and its agenda. It's very un-Indian, and it's to my mind, ironic that an Indian sitting in the US is doing it here. So, congratulations, Monish, and I think everyone should take a look at it.
I'll add to that, it's God's work what he's doing. It's exceptional. They take people from the absolute margins of society and turn them into IIT and IIM graduates. I mean, it's exceptional work.
Oh, I think a round of applause is called for. I hope the message has hit home.
There's one more thing. It's run exceptionally well. There are few businesses which are run as well as the Dakshina Foundation.
That's very good to hear, sir. Very good to hear. Monish?
You know, one of the interesting things is that there are two people on the stage there, Latha and Raamdeo, who've been to the Charles Munger Hall that Dakshina has in Bangalore. I encourage all of you to go there. I would just say this, that if there wasn't a Warren Buffett or a Charlie Munger, there wouldn't be a Dakshina. You know, I mean, I did not grow up in India with a very strong ethos, or any ethos actually for that matter, on giving back. You know, the focus would be take care of your family, take care of your, you know, loved ones, and that was the end of that, you know, and maybe a few people around you. And it was really when I studied Warren and Charlie that it dawned on me that there was a greater sense of, you know, purpose that one could attach. And actually both of them were very useful. Both of them read every Dakshina annual report, cover to cover. Last time I went to see Charlie, the last two Dakshina annual reports were on his table. So many times he would ask me a lot of questions about different things about Dakshina, what Dakshina was doing. And even Warren would ask me questions about that. So they had tremendous influence. They continue to have a tremendous influence on Dakshina. It's been wonderful.
I remember that Monish introduced me to so many of their staff, and he knew their families and how many of them had, you know, tide it over to great heights. It was a pleasure. The post-interview getting to know Dakshina and the sub-staff was a really satisfying experience, a glorious experience. Let me just don my journalist cap for 1 second before I hand it over to you to ask the more difficult questions. Mr. Bhattacharyya, do you think that India is in a good spot now? You know, the way Mr. Raamdeo presented it. Do you think, you know, demographic trends, even tax to GDP is increasing year after year? Do you think there's something big that we are on, or are we over-marketing ourselves to ourselves?
You put it very well, Latha. That's wonderfully put. That last phrase is a wonderful illustration of how you can put something really tricky in a nice way. And you've done what a lot of people do to me. You've put me in the spot, on the spot. I must say this, I think, you know, this is an incredible country. It has amazing capabilities across a very wide spectrum of activity, entrepreneurial capabilities, and a huge bunch of things. But I think the two, and if you look at Charlie, and try to ask yourself, how would Charlie have looked at India? I think that's really the lens you should bring to bear on this. I think one of the things Charlie would have done is, he wouldn't have been so uncritical about the things that aren't so great. We tend to wish away all that we don't like. So we have a little bit of this selective retention bias. As an economist, surely you're much better qualified than I am, but very few countries which run a combined gross fiscal deficit close to double digits will find that they can sustainably maintain that.
Yeah, there is
it's not easy.
Growth on steroids.
It's not easy to do it. And so that's one thing that sometimes I worry about. I think certainly all that you spoke about, the demography, but it needs to be...
Savings, I mean, we're getting an explosion of savings and
right.
Financialization.
But I think all of this needs to be harnessed in a way that is productive.
Yeah.
So the demography doesn't count for very much if you don't focus on healthcare and education.
No, if it was left to Charlie Munger, he would have, rather than invest in steel plants, invested in education.
Primary schools.
Yeah.
I think that's where Charlie would have gone in India. He'd have focused on primary schools and primary health centers, because to really be productive, you need to be in good health and well educated. It's not enough to say that the 15 to 64 population in India is something fantastic and very different, and the number of dependents that each person serves is much lower than in China. There's a graying effect in Japan. That's all true. But at the end, how do you make it happen? He had a wonderful word for this, though I don't think he'd have used it in the context of India. He should love this word. I heard it the first time when I went there with Raamdeo. It's called the Lollapalooza effect. So if good things come together, multiple good things come together, then you have a force multiplier that is just truly, truly exceptional. It just knocks the hell out of things. And I think the difference is, if you look back at America and go back 50, 70, 100 years, I think they did a lot of the building blocks. They got the building blocks right. And the building blocks led to Lollapalooza effects in the US. And I hope it happens in India.
Absolutely. Okay, over to you, Raamdeo.
Thanks, Latha. Monish, since we have you all the way from Austin, I'll ask you this question. I'm going to read a Munger quote, and then I want you to give me the color on it as you see fit, and I hope you recognize the quote. Munger once said, "He's a manager that all investors, CEOs, would-be CEOs, and MBA students should study." Who was he talking about?
Well, I think would be Jim Sinegal at Costco, Mrs. B possibly.
No, not quite. It was Henry Singleton of Teledyne, who
sure.
He admired so much for his thing, for his capital allocation and his brute rationality. Just to inform your audience, Munger has said that Singleton could play chess at the grandmaster level blindfolded. He was that good at capital. He started the concept of buying back shares elsewhere. If you know the story, would you, towards his deathbed, Singleton wanted to sell Teledyne to Berkshire Hathaway, and the transaction could not be consummated. Why is that?
Well, so Singleton, I mean, he was amazing. He, from 1965 to 1970, he bought 170 companies. Typically about 10 times the earnings for these companies, but he blew stock. His stock was trading at 40 to 70 times trailing earnings, and so he was using expensive paper to buy good assets. Then from 72 to 84, bought back 90% of shares at single-digit multiples, right? And then at the end of that 84 period, when he had bought back 90%, Charlie knew him. He went to Charlie and said, okay, now, Teledyne is a good company. They also had an insurance business. And he said, these assets are wonderful, Charlie, and, Berkshire would be a great home. And he wanted to sell it to Berkshire, and Berkshire was very interested in buying it. But Henry wanted Berkshire stock. I mean, he was a very smart guy, this guy was, off the charts. And Warren and Charlie were very interested in doing the deal, but they said, we want to pay cash. And so Henry didn't want to do it that way because, then there's a tax implication and everything else. And of course, in 84, Berkshire stock was $400 a share, which is now $550,000. So it would have been a huge home run. So that deal never took place, but just tells you the amazing mind of Henry.